Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a phenomenal show coming right up with special guest Denise-Alexander-Pyle. And she's here today to share with us her new book, The Power of 10, a guide to living the 10 Commandments and the Golden Rule in modern times. The modern day world can be hectic, confusing, and just a tough place to be. Denise is truly blessed and grateful to have had the opportunity to share the message that the power of 10 is the power of one and all. So let's welcome to the show Denise-Alexander-Pyle.
Thank you, Marianne. I'm happy to be here.
What a pleasure it is to have you here. And my goodness, your book is very fascinating. I was really looking forward to having this discussion with you so we can dive more into this.
Sounds good.
So what inspired you to write this book?
Well, first of all, I look around today and I see the world in sort of a moral crisis. It's hard to discern right from wrong. You can Google anything and find support for any position you have. And I think people are looking for a guide to make sense out of the chaos. And I believe if you understand the 10 Commandments and the Golden Rule, it really simply provides the guidance that people have been looking for. It's been the rules for the road all along.
Well, and so in kind of researching this, how long did the research take? What made you decide that you were the right person to write this book?
I think the book found me. My background, I was raised Jewish, so I learned the 10 Commandments. Back in the old days, we did go to Sunday school and learn the 10 Commandments. Whether we learned what they meant, I think we learned how to memorize them. I've been studying metaphysics since I'm 14 because I've always been sort of a seeker of truth, and a problem solver. I've been an attorney since I'm 24, so I've been an attorney almost 42 years. So I've had a legal education. And I was involved in politics. So it kind of, my journey in life allows me to see problems and how to solve them. But it wasn't until I taught Sunday school back in 1989, 1990 to high school kids that we discussed, modern ethic issues, Judeo-Christian ethics in terms of day-to-day life, and how we discussed them was, within the context of the 10 Commandments. We would study commandment and how they applied in modern day to, whatever the issue was of the day. And it really triggered to me, the problems and everything can be solved if you just look at the 10 Commandments, and it stuck with me. It stuck with me in how I looked at the world. And then 8 years ago, I sat down at a computer for several weekends. My husband was retired and spending winters in Florida. I was still working, so I'd see him every few weeks. And the book came. But it came out like a long sermon, not a book that anybody would want to read. It sort of just channeled out of me. And it took me a while till I was semi-retired myself, where I could sit down and actually digest it, put it in a form people would want to read, and actually add some of the footnotes and links that it needed to be to become relevant and tie it all together. And I started studying Kabbalah also when I was in 2001, so I saw another tie-in to the book. So
how it all came together. Was there any special research that you did for this book, or your background sounds like you had quite a background
just to fill in, obviously, my husband is Quaker. I spend a lot of time also in church, so I have some familiarity. But I did, add some, relevant New Testament as well as Old Testament things that I researched to put in the book. That were there all along, but it just showed how they apply. So that part, I would say I did some research to really footnote it and give it a little more depth.
Mm-hmm. And bring that together. Okay. Well, and so you talk about the 10 Commandments and the Golden Rule in modern times, and I think a lot of times when people hear about the 10 Commandments, they think it's more of an archaic group of, some of them obviously do apply, but they kind of look at it going, well, how does this relate to what I'm living in today? And how do you look at those and are able to draw comparisons to our lives today? I mean, some of them, like thou shalt not kill, is obviously, I mean, that's pretty straightforward. But when we look at some of the other ones, people are kind of like, well, I don't know if that really relates to me.
Well, I looked at them, first of all, as being rules for the road, that it doesn't matter if you believe they were given to us by God directly to Moses on Mount Sinai, or whether we're sort of a test tube experiment for a higher life form. And, they were, well, we've evolved enough. Now we'll give you a little basic laws to follow so you'll get along with one another. I started seeing them really like an onion has layers, and saw that they really are a roadmap. If you go from one to the next, they follow from, sort of heaven or a more spiritual plane, and that's sort of like the tree of life too. And they go down a ladder or down a tree and really delve into our basic, what are we here to do on earth? And I saw that they really lent themselves to be a self-help, how to live your life and find joy and contentment in your life. If you analyze them on a metaphysical way, as well as just, you look at them literally and figuratively, not just what they look like. Well, how does this apply? And again, I think some of it was channeled to me. I think some of it was unconsciously shown to me. So sort of a little bit of common sense and history came together.
Well, and are there any examples of any of the commandments that you can share with us, so our listeners would have a better sense of how it relates to modern times?
Absolutely. I mean, I can walk through each commandment for that matter. But, for example, an easy one, well, I'm going to do 1 and 2 together, if that's okay, because it shows how they go together. I am the Lord your God. To me, it's about, we were created, by source, and yet we were created in the image as to create ourselves. So it's about honoring who we are, honoring our connection to our source and God and each other. So that it's really about how we love and respect, why we're here, but ourselves. Because if you don't love and respect yourself and learn how to honor who you are, you can't relate well to other people. So it's not just who we are personally, but our bodies, how we treat our bodies, how we, because they're temples to house our brain and to do things. So I really look at the first commandment as we're all in the one. We're part of the universe, but we're a golden fiber within a big weaving. So we need to, treat it well. So so that's a starting point from the self-help. But to go on to the next commandment, having no other gods before me, it's really about what keeps us living on our purpose and not getting stuck. Well, it's the material world. It's honoring things that are important. God spoke in the Old Testament, it was the golden calf. You don't have idols. But this is really about we are our own judge. We take care of ourselves. We live to be in service and gratitude, not to get stuck in collecting designer jeans or looking at celebrities or things as being more important than ourselves and our connection with Source. Because those things get us stuck. Those are the things that take us off our path. Because the more you get, you don't necessarily feel better. I mean, so I actually have some exercises. So for that commandment, what can you get rid of that will clean house and make you feel better and realize that these things don't nourish your soul? So that's how I look at that commandment, sort of being about grace and gratitude and service.
Well, and I think for a lot of people that makes sense and how we can use it in our lives today. Because when we look at that, there are lots of stories, in the Old Testament that talk about examples, and people are like, well, I don't pray to a golden cow, so I think I'm okay.
Yeah, but if you're look at the kids who have killed each other to steal a pair of designer jeans or designer shoes, because, things have become more important than life itself. And, they don't realize, or look at our television. Everything is, celebrity this, idol this, and, that's really sends a message that these people are more important than you and your relationship with other people, and that your self-worth is dependent on whether you win an award or you win, you're the best of the best. You have to know you're the best of the best because of the effort you're putting forth in your own life. It's not others don't judge you. You judge yourself by being the best you can be. People aren't looking at themselves as being, I need to please myself. I need to judge myself. I don't need other people to validate me. Only God needs to validate me and my relationship or a universe or source. And it's not about worshiping outside of what's important. To me, it's about what keeps you stuck on the planet as opposed to moving towards your highest purpose, because you get caught up in things that really don't feed your soul.
Yeah, and that end up just kind of being not only the detriment to your spiritual experience, but to those around you as well.
Absolutely.
Well, and so you said you can, I know we don't want to cover every single commandment, because we know that we, of course, want people to pick up their own copy of the book. But what's another one you would like to touch on?
I'd like to talk about thou shalt not kill, or do not kill, because people think of it as just, taking the life of another person from the standpoint of, without justification, or an innocent life. But the life is not just physical. It's spiritual. We kill people's dreams. By what we say, words do, create both positive and negative outcomes. So, you want to encourage people by, wanting to inspire their creativity. We want to nurture them. And we have to be careful because we take away their desire to be the best they can be by being negative. It's about being positive. It's about encouraging beauty in everything and allowing ourselves to be nurtured and creative of our own ideas and dreams.
Yeah, and I've actually been in a situation in the corporate world where I've seen supervisors kill people financially, based off of their own ego or what have you. So there are a lot of different ways to attack people that really do have that injury.
Absolutely, and that's what people don't understand. It's about, you can end a life of somebody, not just their physical life, but the quality of their life. You see it every day with personalities and some of these. What happens when somebody tweets or says something that is misinterpreted, and all of a sudden it gets picked on, and they get, mischaracterized, and their whole career, at least, is killed. Some of it's self-inflicted, but some of it is just misunderstanding. And, that's what I'm saying. It's very careful what we do to one another, inadvertently.
Yeah, and a lot of it, when we have, erroneous ideas about people or situations, not really understanding what's really going on, it's always good to be cautious before we start judging. Don't want to. Well,
we should. I mean, there's only one real judge outside the courtroom, and and we need to learn. We can have opinions. We can agree to disagree, but until you walk in somebody else's shoes, it's very hard to judge.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. Well, and so there's this, Old Testament versus New Testament. Do you think that how you have it in relation to your book, that it's in addition to, or is it kind of supersedes what's been written?
I think they link. I think it's a continuum. I don't think one supersedes the other, and I think they both come from the same place. I think the New Testament really was two things. I think one, it really reinforced the principle of love and the golden rule, because I think people weren't seeing the love that is meant by I am the Lord your God and how we treat one another. It was implied but not being lived at that time. So I think the Christ consciousness that came, that transferred, was really reinforcing how we treat one another. I also think that the New Testament, in part, is based on a lot of the mystical teachings that were in the Jewish mysticism that weren't really taught to the masses. and yet they held very important keys for being the best you could be in your own life purposes and doing what you intended. And I think the New Testament captured some of those things and gave them, at least rather in stories and parables, to the people so that they could better understand why they were here and how to worship and how to relate with one another.
Well, and I think it's important that you made that observation, because a lot of times people think that it's either one or the other, and like there's the Old Testament, and now we have the New Testament. The old one is kind of like, it's there, but it's not really there.
No, there's in the Old Testament, there's actually 613, which interestingly enough adds to 10 numerically. Sort of what they call mitzvahs, which are also minor commandments, but they're supposed to be only practiced by those who, choose to, accept the Old Testament version of facts. But they really drill down the 10 Commandments. If you really read through them, it's like taking each of the commandment and showing how it applies in different ways. For example, the laws why people keep kosher. If you really read about it, interestingly enough, it's about, honoring the energy of the animal that gets killed. You kill it a certain way so that the fear doesn't go into the meat, so that you're not eating that or transferring that energy. I mean, they are metaphysically very good reasons for those things. And if you honor life, it makes sense. So how do we honor what we're eating and recognizing we need to eat these things, but how do we make them energetically more attuned with our bodies so that we're not incorporating negative aspects? I mean, those are the kinds of things that are actually in the Old Testament that I didn't really know about as well because I never studied that deeply, the Old Testament. It was more superficial Sunday school.
Until you started writing this book?
Until I started writing the book. And so when you drill, I said, I read these 613. They're all really just derivations of the 10. But they are drilled down to show you how they applied. And a lot of those applications, even though we thought they only applied to life, 5,000 years ago, it actually, they can be changed a little bit, and they're the same kinds of principles in terms of common sense, common day life that apply today, when you look at them, why you do things.
Well, and to kind of dovetail on this topic, I mean, you also talk about the golden rule in modern times, and I think it would be just a great time to discuss what you mean by that. Because a lot of people hear the golden rule and gosh, they're like, yeah, I'm behind that 100%, and, should always do as we would want others to do to us. And so you hear that. What do you mean by it?
Well, first of all, two things. Number one, I don't think we can treat other people well if we don't honor and respect ourselves and aren't living the best life we can live. Because how can you... if you want to be treated a certain way, if you don't honor yourself, you don't know how you want to be treated. But it's really the overall principle, love overrides everything. I think that if we can discuss things, if we can have compassionate common sense, if we treat each other with respect and have dialogues, the world's going to be a better place because we're all here to share on this planet. And so to me, the golden rule is about finding that place where we can all work together and cross together into, balance.
Well, I think that's a lovely note. And I think you have much more that you're explaining in regards to that in the book, and of course people want to pick up their own copy of this. How does the Kabbalah and the Tree of Life work together? For a lot of people that might not be familiar with the Kabbalah, I think that there's some questions in regards to that.
Well, first of all, as I briefly said before, Kabbalah is the ancient Jewish wisdom that actually explains the eternal laws of how spiritual energy moves through the cosmos. It's basically quantum physics, and that's how old quantum physics understanding is. The tree of life itself depicts 10 what they call sefirot, which are like this, almost like chakras, and they're very. There are no accidents. I think the chakras are based on sefirot as well, plus a hidden one. So there's actually 11, which, interestingly enough, is kind of the golden rule. But they represent the divine attributes of the world and its inhabitants. The structure progresses down from the heavens until it reaches the most earth-laden realms. So in Jewish writings, both the Torah and the Ten Commandments have been referred to as the tree of life. I saw a correlation between the attribute of each sefirot as you follow their path down the tree with each commandment as you went from 1 to 10. So, for example, I am the Lord your God. Crown is the meaning of the word on the tree of life. As you go down to do not covet your neighbor's belongings, that meaning is kingdom, which is the earthly realm. And really, so it's going down. But to me, the 10th commandment is living your own life, living your own purpose, and finding contentment and joy in it by being in the moment in your life and not worried about what's going on in somebody else's life, because that's their journey.
I find it so fascinating that all these things have a correlation to one another, and you're right, there are no accidents, right?
No, it's just another book that helps you see the correlations so you can live a better life. I mean, my favorite book way back when on this synchronicity was Celestine Prophecy. And this is kind of a different way of looking at the same kind of linkages so that we can be the best we can be. It's really very simple. The rules are simple. It's understanding and peeling the layers and saying, oh, wow, I forgot that this could apply. It's those aha moments all rolled up in one little book.
Well, and our listeners will be very familiar with that. We actually interviewed Barnett Bain, the producer of Celestine Prophecies, not that long ago, and we're talking in regards to that. Well, and so when people, when they read your book, what are some of the things you want them to take away from it?
Well, first of all, I want them to take away that it's a book of hope, that I really believe that if everybody got either the wake-up or tune-up they needed, and for most of your listeners, I would imagine it's a tune-up and they'll want other people to read it and say, wow. But that, you know what, if I keep this by my bedstand every night, it's a reminder of I'm going to get up the next day and be the best I can be, and it's not that difficult. And, because we could all get along well if we just follow these principles. As I like to say, we need very little government if people really, brought these principles in and incorporated them into their day-to-day lives.
Well, especially for modern times, because your book makes it very clear that the Ten Commandments is something that can be used for today. It isn't something that wasn't, just used thousands of years ago.
No, it's rules for human beings based upon our human nature. We are how to stay out of getting stuck in the ego, greed aspects of our personalities, because we're all good and evil. We all have our shadow side. It's about finding the balance. And when you find the balance, this book, as I look at it, how to always choose light over dark.
Yeah, because a lot of times it's just those simple choices that people make daily that is the light and the dark.
And that's it. And it's just how to always say, oh, this is easy because I see the alignment. What brings me closer to God and being in alignment with my true purpose or with universe and feeling good? Because we're all made up of light and dark. We're all made up of the spark, the spirit that inhabits our body, our soul, and the physical matter that makes up our body, which has density. So when I say dark, it's the density that comes from earth that keeps us stuck. When you think of a golden calf, it was made out of earthly matter. What's important is invisible to the eye. That's really what our essence is, and it's honoring the essence that gives us life, that creates all the beauty around us.
So, Denise, if people are wanting to learn more about you and your book, where could they go?
denise-alexander-pyle.com.
Well,
and the last name Pyle. Sometimes it doesn't sound that way when I speak it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so I know there you have where people can learn more about you and your book, and you have a blog and all sorts of interesting information.
And I'm learning how to add to the blog. I'm an old dinosaur, so all of this, I've had a Facebook page for a while, but learning how to really link and use the Internet and add these things to it. So my blog is getting more filled as I'm getting these interviews and learning how to link them.
Oh, well, perfect. Well, I know you've been interviewed by a couple of the shows that we're good friends of, and we are glad that you're able to spend this time with us here today, Denise. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be on these shows. I am meeting the most incredible, wonderful people who are all doing wonderful work and getting the right message to people to help them really find their true purpose and live a joyful life.
Well, thank you, Denise. It's been such a pleasure to spend this time with you and, of course, to talk about your book, The Power of 10. Again, if you'd like to connect with Denise, you can at her website, denise-alexander-pyle.com, and her book is available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Thursday, Friday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.